Well, I apologize for being late. Hi there. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for showing up on a Thursday evening instead of our usual cast iron Wednesday. Of course, this is not the first time this has happened. About once a month or so, I am scheduled for the work pager on a Wednesday night, and because of the very real possibility I could be interrupted, that plus, I wasn't feeling that well last night. I will be completely honest. But nothing to worry about, nothing serious, and I'm doing fine now. We are just getting over our second heat wave already here in New England, and the first day of summer was only last week. Sometimes we don't get to 90 degrees until past the 4th of July, but this time it's already happened twice, maybe even 3 times. So that, yeah. It's going to be, it has been that kind of a year, that's for sure. And yeah, I'll save the global warming discussions for another time because we are, of course, here as always to talk about cast iron. And hello again, though, to everybody who has shown up. I mean, I do see Timber Bear and hydrated drink and Gatorade or something. Yes, and I have been hydrating myself. Thank you very much. Hello, Jimmy Langford. Hello, Bookworm73, and welcome again to another YouTube Live, where, as I mentioned in the title, of course, we are getting ready for the 4th of July. Today is the first day of July. Tomorrow, for a lot of people tonight, the holiday weekend begins. And I know even at my work, things are likely going to be quiet, and it's a good thing because a lot of people are out, for the holiday. But other than that, of course, there is a good part about the upcoming holiday, and that, of course, will be the cooking. And what else is there really to cook in other than good old American cast iron? And that, of course, is the subject for tonight. Not just modern day USA made cast iron, but vintage cast iron, because of course, antique. No, the United States has been possibly the world's greatest producer of cast iron, really pretty much since the Industrial Revolution. I mean, I know the Industrial Revolution began in Europe, like England especially, and they were responsible for producing large numbers of cast iron pots and technically inventing Dutch ovens. But of course, it was here in the USA where modern day cast iron cooking came into place. And of course, cooking hearths and fireplaces were eventually replaced by good old kitchen stoves. And of course, that's where we've got our modern day cast iron for producing that. So yeah, here we go. Off to start as we celebrate once again cast iron made in America. This, of course, is the first of Lodge's Made in America series, which they started in 2018 with this Made in America skillet, and then went through 2019, 2020. I have not yet seen a 2021 Made in America skillet from Lodge, which is interesting because I would have thought that last year's skillet, the Rosie the Riveter one, that is, would have been an enormous bestseller. Everybody was promoting that. I was promoting that. And at least in the cast iron community, everybody knew about the Rosie the Riveter skillet and they wanted one. Likewise, to that matter, I have not seen a 2021 entry for Lodge's Legacy series. So who knows? Well, that's a subject we'll come into, I guess. So yeah, hi, and hi again, Pip Gorn and JD Hive John. Howdy, y'all, and Fluffy Otter, and William Hurt. So again, yeah, it's always nice to see you folks again. Thank you very much, as always, for showing up here on YouTube Live. And as I mentioned already, we're talking about America tonight. And for good reason. I mean, as you know, the whole thing about Made in America really invokes a lot of patriotism in many subjects, of which cast iron cookware is indeed one of them. I mean, as you know, there's been a thing about American-made cast iron again since it, since it first began. in the 1700s here in the U.S., even when we were the colonies, and even before we became the U.S. And I'm proud myself, for instance, to own a an early 19th century cast iron cauldron made by the Savory Company of Philadelphia. And there were many, many foundries and manufacturers of cast iron all over the U.S. And that would include even, okay, and that would include here in New England as well. There were a number of foundries here in the even in New England. Although, of course, as you know, as time went by, cast iron manufacturing in general eventually went from smaller manufacturers to larger ones, and it was there that we get into a lot of the more famous USA brands that everybody knows and talks about even today, as you know. And we get into things like Griswold and Wagner, and even the Favorite and Martin Stove companies and Birmingham Stove and Range, all of which have very long and proud legacies. Even the ones who, well, ended up going out of business, and that was, quite frankly, almost all of them, with only one major exception from the vintage foundries, and that, of course, was Lodge Cast Iron. So. Also here, yeah, yo, W-O, and feeling good, Lewis. Yeah, looking good, Billy Ray. Feeling good, Lewis. I'm sure some folks can recognize that reference, even though it's more from Christmas than the 4th of July. But yeah, American-made cast iron, I mean, really became a thing when we were transitioning from an agricultural nation to a manufacturing nation, and an industrial nation, I should say, which again was around the time of the 1900s to the especially the early 20th century, and that's where again many of those companies really had their heydays, and for good reason, of course. You know, there's really, not only do they have really great history, which is a good part of it, but the cast iron was, of course, wonderful quality even back then. I mean, I can right now, for instance, I can just as easily pull out something from the early 20th century, and I think I will. It'll only take a second or so, and that, of course, get into I've shown these pans off before, and of course, there's no reason not to. Then that would, of course, include things like a 19th century gate-marked skillet, which is a very typical example of just that. Of, I guess you could call it middle term American cast iron. You know, it's not from the early days of the 17th century or 18th century up into the early 19th century. It's more like from the later 19th century to the early 20th, when things were really getting into gear here for American cast iron. Actually, having said that, I think I better start something, if you don't mind me jumping around here, because, yeah, as I mentioned, we're talking about America, and of course, we're showing off American cast iron. But then again, what else should we do but to use American cast iron? And so let me turn the view over a little bit for a moment. And there we are for a starter. Because, of course, yeah, the 4th of July is coming, and here we are celebrating America. And so we're going to be doing some American cooking here and on our stovetop tonight. And when you do that, I mean, really, what is there to talk about when they talk about American foods? They usually say, oh, it's as American as hot dogs and apple pie. So, hey, what else can we do tonight? Here, let's have ourselves some hot dogs and some apple pie, which we prepared but have not yet baked. So this incidentally is in the new Lodge pie pan, which I understand they've got a sale on these things pretty much today and this week, even as I'm speaking. No, Lodge is not paying me to say this, but if you go to their website, they're having a deal, something like you can get 2 of their cast iron pie pans for, I think, $30, and that is a really good deal. So nonetheless, we've got the oven all heated up and might as well get started so that we can have ourselves some good old American apple pie. And that's easy enough. let's pull this away. Right now, the oven is at 425. So just drop this carefully. All right, here we go. And here's why I need your help, folks. I tend to forget these things during these little live sessions, and I'm hoping somebody can tell me in 10 minutes or so, turn that thermostat down from 425. No, thermostat, that temperature from 425 to 350. You know, that's the traditional way of baking an apple pie. You start it out at 425, and then after a few minutes, you just drop the temperature down and let it bake nice and slowly, more or less, and evenly until we've got ourselves a done apple pie. So, somebody says, Louis Juarez, would you consider purchasing a butter pat skillet or Lancaster skillet? These two skillets are reminiscent of a vintage cast iron. Well, yeah, they are modern day USA cast iron, of course. And yes, they were made in the style of the old fashioned or of the vintage cast iron. And of course, the one thing that a lot of people really dislike, even though it's a necessity making them these days, is the price. I mean, as you know, a butter pat skillet can run into the range of what? $200, $250. Would I consider purchasing one? Well, here's the thing. I am not a good example of that kind of a customer because, as you know, I've got myself a nice cast iron collection as it is, and I really have to have an excuse to buy pretty much any more cast iron pans, whether it's a butter pat or even a Family Dollar Asian made skillet. What I've said before about the modern day and very expensive, I guess you could call them designer cast iron pans, is that I like them. I like Butter Pat. I like Stargazer. I like Field. I like these new businesses. And I would say if you feel you have a very special occasion and a need for one of those, it would certainly be worth it. Because they have done all of these comparisons already. If you look on YouTube, a lot of amateur cooks like myself are doing comparisons between the new modern designer expensive cast iron skillets and cheaper cast iron skillets, and between vintage cast iron skillets. I myself have a video on my YouTube channel where I did a side-by-side comparison of a modern day Stargazer cast iron skillet versus a vintage Birmingham Stove and Range Red Mountain skillet. And really the answer was pretty much something close to a tie. Now, BSR, those cast iron pans are fantastic, as you know. I mean, really, everybody who uses vintage BSR pans loves them. And the really that Stargazer pan had really a very high bar to reach, and they did it in the taste test or in the cooking test in that video. As you'll see, they came out just about neck and neck with the BSR, and you could really say that with any of these carefully designed and special modern day cast iron pans. And yes, that comes back to Butter Pat. If, say, for instance, you were to get something meant to last forever for a wedding, for an anniversary, as a very, very special skillet, or if you really can afford some really expensive designer cookware and not just cast iron, yes, I would say Butter Pat would be a nice investment, and I would not have any objection to it any more than I have myself a big stove Dutch oven, and a lot of people use Le Creuset, and they also use Shun knives, for instance, and Global knives, and even the and all of those other fancy designer knives as well. So that's hardly the only case. So even though it's kind of going on along and long. Yeah, as he says, Louis Juarez has his own channel, and watch it, folks. Good information. Both of these channels are great. Well, thank you. And yeah, I don't mind a plug for him. And as you said, I'm sure he has a Louis probably has a cast iron skillet like that. And he said, and Louis also says Stargazer is underrated. I found the more you cook, the more you use it, the better it cooks. Well, you know, funny, you could say that about any cast iron pan. So Thanks for all the BSR Griswold and all the vintage cast iron videos. Well, I can only say I've learned from experience, and I'm a cast iron nerd. I've loved learning about it. Okay, good. I did remember to have that up as well. And did anybody check? Are we at 10 minutes yet? Remember how I said I need to be reminded of 10 minutes pass here? Because I know me, I tend to forget these things. But anyway, yeah. On the other hand, besides the fancy designer modern day cast iron pans, of course, we've got all of the many cast iron pans that are readily available today. 5 minutes past. Thank you, John. Including, of course, ones from probably our favorite company, and that, of course, would be Lodge Cast Iron. And I did forget something. I forgot my pot holder. 1 second. Finally replaced my oven mitts so that they look clean again, at least for a while. So yeah. Anyway, Lodge Cast Iron, as you know, they are the last of the vintage American cast iron manufacturers, and they have been having a really banner time. This is some of their best business time, or so they say. Yet, even strangely enough, they have not released a 2021 edition, at least not yet, of the Made in America skillet. Yeah, I'm heating this one up on the stove top as well, even while we're talking, because that's the other thing. As I said, we're doing us some hot dogs and apple pie tonight, nice and easy cooking, and it's a good thing too because it's still hot. And that's one thing I'm proud of on my channel as well. I'm sure folks have seen the videos that are listed as the so-called most popular ones on my channel for having, the greatest number of hits. And currently the actual cooking video where I do actual cooking that has the greatest number of hits is, of course, the one where I cook some hot dogs in a cast iron skillet. And why not? I mean, as we said already, it's as American as hot dogs and apple pie. And hot dogs, there's nothing wrong with a hot dog, at least once in a while. The health benefits or problems of eating things like hot dogs is not a subject that I'm going into here. We are here for the cooking. And anyway, we eat hot dogs because we love hot dogs. Besides, I'm not doing this every single day. So, what fixings do you like on your hot dogs? Well, myself, I am a very simple person. First of all, I've got some good old Hunt's tomato ketchup, some good old French's yellow mustard, wimpy yellow mustard, which I've lived with all my life. And one other thing that really makes this a real New England tradition. Oh, yeah, better stir this. Better turn this down, in fact. Looks like things are coming nicely. Yeah, that's right. In fact, I'll just turn this down here. And that, of course, would be some good old Boston baked beans. There we go. I think we got it right now. Because I am a born and bred New Englander, and I am very proud of my New England heritage, which is why Franks and beans have been a New England tradition for a long time. Well, no, it's not because of me. I had nothing to do with it. I'm following a New England tradition that we have had for a long time. So yeah, there we go. Franks and beans, folks. Yeah, in New England we call them Franks, and some good old apple pie. I like mustard and sauerkraut. I love Lodge, BSR, and all cast iron. I found myself collecting cast iron now. It has become an obsession. Yeah, that's why they call it cast iron-itis, believe me. As folks know, it's like the thing about cast iron is really it's got this mystical appeal to it. I know I fell for it, and that's why I end up starting this YouTube channel as well as the cast iron cooking group, because it's like when you have one cast iron pan and you start using it and enjoying it, suddenly, next thing you know, you have more than one cast iron pan. You get another, and then another, and then a couple more, and then more and more. And it seems like every time you open your cabinet, it seems like the cast iron has been fruitful and multiplied, which means, of course, we got to start spacing the cast iron further apart so that it'll stop multiplying. Oh, yeah. Oh, they look good. I certainly hope so. Hello again, Pawpaw Dan. I owe you an apology. You had posted a question on one of my videos, and I completely forgot about that. I'm very sorry. I will have to follow up on that pretty much as soon as I'm done now. But anyway, getting back to all of this, as I said, we've got ourselves some nice and easy. There we go. We are cooking us up some franks or hot dogs, and we'll get a nice view right here, I think. Likewise, I can bring the microphone a little bit closer. I'm thinking by now, by the way, that I should probably turn that stove down to 350. Maybe even a little less, so that we can just let this thing slow cook now, relatively speaking, for the next, I don't know, half hour or so. Now we'll get that view once again, where, as I mentioned already, this is a, well, it's a little special because this is not just a large cast iron skillet. It is, again, the Made in America large cast iron skillet. Well, they're all made in America, except the enameled ones. But this one is part of their Made in America series. And it has the rough surface, so-called rough surface of a large cast iron pan. And yet, it is still an outstanding cooker. I mean, there's really, if I would recommend this as anyone's first cast iron skillet. I mean, because it's, you know, it's available everywhere. It's cheap. You can really abuse it. And if by some miracle you end up breaking it, like maybe dropping it off the stove or something and breaking the handle, it's easy enough to go back to Walmart or TJ Maxx and buy another one. So yeah, the large cast iron skillet is really about the best pan you can have in your kitchen for that reason. I mean, I mean, granted, daily cooking will probably be like, say, if you have one, with your Griswold or your Stargazer or your unmarked Wagner, you'll probably end up cooking in those. And yet, on the other hand, everybody needs at least one large cast iron skillet. Simply, I don't think there's any way around that. So nonetheless, yeah, there we go. Let me move this over so that thank you again for waiting. There we go. So let's prepare us up some hot dogs. Nice and simple, and there's nothing to it. Pretty much like I showed in the video. Oh, and speaking of which, one more Made in America thing here. This is one thing I'm proud of when I got into a knife kick a few years ago. So this is a case knife here. So also Made in America. Anyway, the very first time I fried hot dogs, as opposed to simply boiling them, I was blown away. I mean, it is so much. There is so much of a difference between frying hot dogs versus the typical boiled ones that really, once you have had these things fried in a cast iron skillet, you will never be satisfied with boiled hot dogs ever again. And they are just this easy too. All I'm doing is just, as you can see, cutting some very easy slits in the hot dog, just so that, you know, these things will expand, and if you don't put slits in them, they will burst, which is why with these slits, when they expand, it'll be controlled, and then they simply won't burst. And indeed, this may be one of the easiest dishes you can make in cast iron because, of course, the hot dogs are pre-cooked. And where did I put those tongs? I know I had tongs here somewhere. Oh, yes, I did. Here they are. Oh, watch yourself. What I also found is that if you really want to go the extra step, you don't just you can even drop them in a dry pan, but what you really want to do is do just a little bit of butter. Yes, I'm saying specifically butter. You can use vegetable oil or lard or the like, but butter will actually give a nice flavor to your hot dogs. And it's something you really don't want to miss. I only have the temperature on this, by the way, at about 4 on my stovetop. No, my stovetop is 1 through 8 plus high. So this is only a little bit more, a little less than halfway. The reason why, as I said, is that these are pre-cooked hot dogs. So all you really want to do is make sure it is nice and hot throughout. And if you were to do a blazing hot, throw these hot dogs into a blazing hot pan, the outsides would burn while the insides still remain cold. So you would have blackened hot dogs on the outside with a cool center.
Surprisingly, some people like them like that.
Yeah, well, okay, some people do like them like that.
Yeah, like when you go to camp, like you go to a cookout, you're like, I like them burnt on the outside. Like, what's wrong with you?
Well, no, I mean there's the difference, of course. Then we're talking about char, and believe me, charred hot dogs. Oh yeah, those are pretty good. But no, I'm not. I'm talking about the kind that are really burnt, and that's not really what you want. So.
No, I'm gonna scorch on my. Hi everybody.
Yeah, hi. Jamie says hi. And really, this is the type of dish that, again, if you're teaching your kids how to cook, this is one of those things that they can start out with, because all you really have to do is keep these dogs moving for a few minutes or so. And once they start to expand and the outside takes on a nice color, then they're done. And you have got yourself some hot dogs. Really nothing to it. Now, as I mentioned already, the rough surface of a large cast iron pan, so-called rough, this is the thing that people have been dissing Lodge about ever since they introduced it. And the reason for it, well, we've gone into this reason, of course, before, is that the main reason for the new design of the of this Lodge cast iron skillet is so that it will allow their factory seasoning to adhere to the pan, so that they can very quickly spray a light coating of seasoning on hundreds and thousands of pans per day, and it's guaranteed to stick. So, a very fast seasoning process, which is not as good as if you take the time to season at home, but it's good enough. And it was good enough to save Lodge from bankruptcy. So that was why they pretty much designed their entire production model around this factory seasoning, which is also the reason why all Lodge cast iron pans have the so-called rough surface. Now, as has also been said, oh, by the way, notice these things are already starting to expand here. As has also been said, the so-called rough surface of a large cast iron pan, in fact, has been smoothed down. They do not just simply take this out of the mold and that's it. Some of the Asian made cast iron pans certainly feel like that, but no, Lodge really does have a very fancy process for smoothing down the surface of its cast iron pans. And those of us who have seen the actual process know what it is, in that there is this centrifuge that they put all of these pans in after they've cooled off and have gone gone through some, at least, of their quality control process. The pans go down this long conveyor belt into this huge vibrating centrifuge, in which the pans are completely immersed and covered with thousands and thousands of very heavy oblong-shaped. You can't really call them ball bearings because they're not circular, but it's the same idea, round or oblong rather, and again, very thick and heavy pieces of metal that really roll across the surface and pretty much beat down the most of the sharp edges and ensure that the rough surface of the pan is in fact smoothed down and pressed down. So the end result is we have a pan that does not have a mirror smooth, ground down, polished and buffed surface, but it is definitely a smoother surface, one that still has plenty of cracks and not cracks, but plenty of crevices and spaces that allow the seasoning to stick and adhere to the metal. And that's a very brief description, of course, of the process in which Lodge, produces the surface of their cast iron pans. And of course, any seller or maker of cast iron pans these days, if they're going to try producing their own cast iron pan, what's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to start bashing Lodge. for precisely that reason. And that in itself is really a subject in itself that I really haven't taken the time to cover yet. I've talked about large cast iron, and there's enough history and enough large cast iron pans that we could do many of these little discussions on them. But at some point or another, there is going to be a discussion specifically of the process in which Large smooths out their cast iron pans. By the way, look at these things now. Here, let me pull one up for you, in fact. The slits are definitely expanding, and as you can see, the surface is definitely starting to brown as well. So really, here's the part where, at this point, all we have to do is keep on going until these things take on the color we want. And it's not quite done yet. I do like a more of a cooked surface. I shouldn't say charred, but you know the point, where the surface actually definitely does get a little, what's the word, dry, or it looks like it's starting to peel. And then it's ready, and then it's all nice and toasty. Okay, I think I've talked enough here. What else do we have? Somebody sanded them. Oh, I see. Have you checked the pie? No, I haven't checked the pie yet, actually, but I can see that some folks here have, in fact, sanded their large skillets. Okay, that is your choice. I have described already. That's the reason why I have no need. I see no need, really, to polish a cast iron pan. And yes, you can indeed talk again and again about sanding them down with whatever grit of sandpaper you want. And you could certainly do so, because the main reason is it's your cast iron and you can do what you want with it. I have no need to do it. I see no need to do with it. I mean, after all, these hot dogs certainly aren't sticking to this large pan, are they? I have no trouble at all cooking in this. And I have already made things like pancakes and eggs and omelets in this pan, and they do not stick, largely because I do a lot of my cooking low and slow. Sanding and here's another thing where I will come out against grinding down a cast iron pan, even a large pan, in that grinding it down will, in the short run, get you a wonderfully shiny mirror, maybe even mirror smooth surface. Unless you put a really heavy duty job into it, of course, it is going to look sanded down. Namely, it's going to have hundreds or thousands of lines and scratch marks all over the surface that will definitely indicate that it has been sanded down. So what? It's my cast iron. Yes, it is. Feel free to do so. And again, I'm not saying that. But you consider that after you cook on these things for a while, and it may take a while, it may take like a week, it may take a month, it may even take a year of good cooking, eventually the pan is going to take on that nice blackened color. And at that point, the seasoning will have covered up a good deal of that smooth, polished surface. And it's not going to look glass smooth anymore. So, yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, I see. So got into trouble again?
I don't know what did you pull the top of. The steak, maybe?
I suppose that's possible.
Yeah, it's the covered in the steak wrapper.
Yeah. Oh, gee, you're saying he got into the steak.
Yeah, well, I just found it coming out from the bed. I'm like, what is that? But it's pressed like they do with the like grocery store, you know what I mean?
But anyway, as in addition, I have shown my my Stargazer skillet, which I have already said has had a seasoning problem. It is so wonderfully glass smooth that it's been difficult to seasoning. It is in fact taking on a seasoned color. Even then, it's not black. It's more of a mottled color, and that's fine. And I enjoy my my Stargazer skillet. I did not smooth it down myself. And again, as I said, I see no need to. Not to this large cast iron pan, not to that Stargazer, not even to say a rough Asian made cast iron pan. And that's really all I have to say, I think, about the subject of grinding down a cast iron pan. I am very much happy to keep getting these large pans, and I will use them as is. All right, now let's take a look, by the way. Oh, yeah. Now we're starting to get some hot dogs, aren't we, folks? Which I should say again, I only cook this low and slow, mind you. I only cook this at 4 on the stovetop here. How is that MUSA wok? I'll bet he enjoys it. It's very hard to find a cast iron pan that you are disappointed with. And that's one of the secrets behind these unboxing videos. Only in very rare instances have we seen an unboxing video said, you know, I don't like this. In just about every instance, even my own unboxing videos, I've said how these pans are great. Well, I didn't say that when I unboxed those Star Wars skillets, the Darth Vader and BB-8 skillets.
We still have one open.
Oh yeah,
Still boxed up.
yeah, that's right. We never did give that one away.
No.
Well,
Maybe we should pull it right away.
Yeah, I suppose that's possible come Christmas or so. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was some guy who says. Oh yeah,
That's right.
yeah, that's right. We will get to that. I have a $25 light cast iron wok. It comes with a really nice pre-seasoning. It was machined mostly smooth, works great. And I wouldn't mind seeing a video of that in action either. So, oh yeah, not bad. I would say, meanwhile, these hot dogs are definitely at the point where they're going to be done. So that sure didn't take very long either, did it? That's what I mean. This is the type of thing, if your kids are learning how to cook, this is definitely one of those dishes you can start them off with. There's almost no way to ruin the hot dogs like this, as long as they do it low and slow, and under your supervision, of course. And having said that, also once again check these baked beans. Oh yeah. Nice and easy, and I'm still getting the liquid all over the place, like I always do. Okay, that sure wasn't hard at all, was it? Maybe I'll turn this off for now. So let's get these out. Nice hot dogs, I think. Not bad at all. I wish I was an Oscar Mayer wiener. I'm not sure if Oscar Mayer is American, but these days that part it probably doesn't matter much. Okay, now of course we have done ourselves some hot dogs, so that means one other thing we got to do: figure out how to toast these buns here in the manner of speaking. Let's try this. And let's try carefully this. Because, of course, we do want ourselves some nice toasty buns. Nice buns. Oh, yeah. Okay. John, that sounds like brilliant alchemy. I'm always looking for. Yeah. American as hot dogs and Coca-Cola. Yes, indeed. We've got some of that. Yeah, the buns, are you going to pan toast them? Well, I'm certainly trying, as you can see. I think I got the wrong shaped buns. I should have gotten those circular buns. That's all right. My large Volkswerks garage, my large arch logo number 3 skillet is much lighter weight than my number 3 large 3-notch. Yeah, large, their pans were definitely, they actually kept the same size pans throughout their entire history, which is nice. Some of them do seem to be different weight. I will say that. They were always thick and heavy. The earliest ones were indeed lighter. By the time we got into the 3-notch era, then large pans certainly took on a standard weight. I think the modern day large pans are even heavier than the vintage 3-notch pans, but not really by that much. I always toast the insides as well. I don't blame you one bit. But anyway, we've gotten all this, as I mentioned. I've mentioned some stuff about Lodge cast iron as opposed to, say, the other vintage cast iron makers. Because, yeah, I mean, in the 20th century, in the early 20th century, I should say, nonetheless, Lodge, and for that matter, they're probably their main competitor, Birmingham Stove and Range. Their pans were really considered to be throwaway items. I mean, they made skillets, they made cheap. Inexpensive frying pans for the kitchen. They were considered a maker of would commodities be the right word? Basically utilities, essentials, the type of thing that you have to have. I mean, in any kitchen, especially in those days, you had to have at least one frying pan. So if you wanted to do this on the cheap and go down to Montgomery Ward, for instance, or Woolworths, and then pick up a cheap frying pan, you might end up with a Lodge, even though it was probably unmarked, or a BSR, even though it was probably unmarked, well, except maybe for a paper label. Sometimes you might even end up with something like an unmarked Wagner, and that's a little bit of history in itself. And then, of course, if you wanted to be fancy, I'd say really, what was the butter pat skillet of those days? Probably Griswold. I mean, Griswold, as you know, made a real name for itself, and that's why they proudly put their name on their pans. And that's why you saw Griswold at the fancier places, like Macy's, for instance. And Sop Mod, if I'm saying that right, 556 mm. I just hit my new Lodge pans lightly with an orbital to knock down the really obvious pebble texture. After that, and several repeated seasonings in a row, they became practically non-stick. Okay, and I'll say again, I mean, this is, you can do it, and if you feel that it needed it, well, then more power to you. As you can see, I can only say again, I've used this. I did re-season this pan myself, but I have not smoothed it or sanded it or done anything else to it, and it's cooking just fine. In fact, by now, yeah, that's right. Definitely, this is not the best. Maybe, ooh, and it's getting hot too. I may have to just bite the bullet and open it up even more. Of course, considering what I'm going to do with this, I probably should. Because as I mentioned, we're having Franks and beans tonight. But yeah, now it's getting close to the time, I think, to actually check that that pie, don't you think? So that means I've got to move this camera out of the way again. And let's see what we got. Ooh, not bad. And I forgot to put an egg wash on the top. Ugh, I'm really not thinking as usual. But still, it's got a nice brown color on it so far. So I'd say we're doing pretty good. Here, let me pull this out a little more for you. Watch myself, damn it. Oh, well. Battle scars, what can you say? So, yeah, I'd say we are off to a pretty good start there with that pie. And anyway, pies are, again, apple pie is also very, very easy. I probably shouldn't do much more than a few minutes because the edges are browning anyway. So I'd say we're probably almost done with this. Besides, I think I know what to do. Even though I forgot the egg wash, I can always give it a butter. I can always give it a coating of butter at the very end when it comes out. Usually, New England or top split hot dog buns are toasted on the sides when they adjoin each other, not on the tops and bottoms. Yes, and I think I can certainly see why. So, on the other hand, that's not so bad. And besides, as I said, I've got a plan for this anyway. And that plan is nice and simple. Let's pull out another one. Actually, I should probably pull out a bowl anyway. Because what we'll be doing is pretty much loading it up here. We take our bun, put in a dog, and then from there, I want do. And then from there, cover it with the baked beans. That's why I did the bowl. There we are. This is our New England version of Franks and beans. You could even put ketchup on the side, in fact, and mix that in with the beans too. So there we go. This is definitely a USA-made dish, and it's a New England dish, that's for sure. Got ourselves a nice and simple, what can I say? A bean dog, Boston baked bean dog, Franks and beans. Not a bad start here, and we're only 45 minutes into this. But yeah, that's how we do things here in New England. I mean, after all, I know down south, you folks have your baked beans a little different. You probably don't have it with hot dogs. In fact, more likely, you have it with cornbread. So, okay, Jessica T. Hi, everyone. I'm a little late. And Jana, hi. Rare occasion, I'm not asleep and you're streaming live. Well, thank you for showing up, I guess. So, okay, stop mod. I clean my cast iron in the oven on self-clean mode, then oiling in between with grapeseed oil at about 200 degrees. I have Pappy Dan. I have 3 modern lodge skillets that we use weekly. Didn't do anything to them, and they became smoother over time. Some guy. Did I need to grind my cast iron? No. Do I like my pan better? Yes. Was it worth an hour of labor to make my buy-it-for-life product more to my liking? Oh, yeah. Well, the short answer to that really is I think it's to everyone's taste. So, as I said, my cast iron pans have always been users. I've never had a problem with my lodge pans, and that's why I enjoy using them pretty much out of the box, and I see no need to grind them. That may not appeal to everyone, and again, as always, you're free to do what you want with your cast iron. And on the other hand, of course, as well, this particular one, as I mentioned, is the Made in America series skillet. The first one, in fact, from 2018. And if I were to grind it down, technically that would lose that would reduce the collector value of the skillet. Not that I intend on selling it, but then again, who knows? I'm not going to live forever. And in another XX number of years, when my the executor of my will takes care of my collection, I've no doubt there will probably be an auction, at which case then, well, as I said, I'm glad I kept my Lodge Made in America skillet in this type of condition. So Julianne, that's what I thought. I'm new to cast iron, except for one oval Le Creuset that I've been using as often as possible to break it in, but I want to do more. Yeah, Le Creuset, of course, is enameled cast iron, which means you don't need to season it, and you especially don't need to grind it down. The disadvantage of enameled cast iron is that you do always have to use a lot of oil every time you cook because, of course, in the end, you wash it all off when you're done. On the other hand, the advantage of enameled cast iron is just that, is that it's technically permanent and that you can cook just about anything in enamel cast iron, including acidic dishes with lots of vinegar, lots of tomatoes, or both, or even a lot of alcohol, stuff that almost certainly would affect the seasoning on a bare cast iron pan like this. So yeah, that's why it's not a bad idea to have a variety of cast iron. As much as I enjoy bare cast iron, I do have some enamel cast iron, and I do get a lot of use out of that as well. So, Jana, I want to ask, how important is it to scrape cast iron to spotless, clean the burnt-on meat juices, for example? I'm also afraid that the small leftovers will start to smoke. They probably will when you cook at really, really high heat. If you want, okay, the residue from cooking, especially on bare cast iron, is certainly what helps to build up the seasoning. It can be argued that on the cooking surface, at least, as much as you want the seasoning on there, you don't want too much on there for that precise reason, because you don't want the buildup to start smoking and causing trouble whenever you cook. So it's well, what can I say? It's like it's something of a really. You can wash your cast iron pan to the degree where you think it's clean. And over time, you will certainly understand what is clean and what isn't. I think it's about time to take that pie out of the oven by now. So let's bring that out and we will take care of that. Let's move it over here. This, by the way, is not hot, except for that. Because that was why I used to cook those beans. This, on the other hand, is another cast iron pan that I am glad I did not grind down, and that was the Lodge 120th anniversary skillet. Now, of course, we are going to be seeing the Lodge 125th anniversary skillet. Technically, that might make the 120 skillet more valuable, but as I said, I have no intention of selling it. On the other hand, it is a nice heirloom. Okay, let's get this out of the oven now before it does burn. And as I said, my bad. I should have given this an egg wash, and I was so busy preparing for this live that I completely forgot about that. So, gonna have to compromise. And that would mean, how can we do this? Ow, I can stab myself, why don't I? That would have to mean giving it a butter coating instead. Whoops, oh great. Yeah, crush the pie, why don't I? Okay. Oh well, my own fault. Let's just do this a light coating anyway. The butter will melt because this is a pretty hot pie, that's for sure. There we go. Now I'm getting the hang of it. Something always happens pretty much. I mean, I think I have yet to have an absolutely flawless cook. Besides, it'll still taste good. So we will give this a nice and easy coating of butter, which, as you can see, is actually melting rather nicely. There we go. And then from there, give me 1 second. I'm going to dig something else out of the cabinet very quickly. Appreciate your patience, folks. Where did it go? I know I got it around here somewhere because I was looking at it the other day. Now I cannot seem to find it. Of course, what else is new? Rat. Apologize that this is taking so long, folks. Into my cabinet as quickly as I can. Damn it. Alright, I know the stupid thing is around here somewhere, and of course I forgot all about it. Aha! Found it. Boy, that sure took long enough. Sorry about that. And that would be some sparkling sugar. You know, some big sugar crystals. So that we could just very lightly, which again I should have done before I baked this. That's what I mean. I get like tunnel vision during these lives, it seems like, and I just tend to forget vital steps like adding an egg wash to the top of the pie. So I just have to compensate for it. And so yeah, that's why, as you say already, I really appreciate these live videos. Yeah, I know what you mean by appreciate, of course, and and I don't blame you. I mean, that's the thing about these live videos, in that I make mistakes, and as you can see, I make mistakes quite often. I am far from a professional cook. Of course, I'm doing this entirely on my own, in my own kitchen, on a low budget. I do not have a production staff helping me out here, so that means mistakes do happen. In my in my edited videos, well, obviously I get to edit out most of the bloopers, except maybe for the funny ones. But here you get to see them all occurring live. But nonetheless, this is what we have. And so far, I'd say we are still off to a pretty good start here, because after all, as I mentioned already, this is America, land of hot dogs and apple pie. But we were getting again to the subject of, as I mentioned, cast iron pans and being smooth. And here's the thing. I mean, yeah, the vintage cast iron makers like Wagner and Griswold and early Lodge and Favorite and BSR, they all polished their cast iron skillets to a mirror smooth finish, which meant they did take longer to season, of course. Even then, in those days, though, I mean, that was one of the things, in that it did take them longer to produce their pans, in that while they did produce them in very high numbers over time, the amount of pans made by Lodge or Griswold or BSR up until the point where automated production came in really paled as compared to the amount of pans that were produced when these companies went for more for automated production. And that's when, yes, their pans did start to become more rough. I mean, as you know, the vintage BSR pans, for instance, they had good smooth surfaces, top and bottom, inside and out. We're talking about the Red Mountain series. Then by the time the automated production moved in the 1960s, yes, they did grind down and smooth the insides of their pans. The outside of the Century Series pans did become rougher and less polished. I know I have a BSR Century around here to demonstrate that. So let me see what I have and where the hell did it go. I never think of these things in advance. That's why I always end up digging these things out. So, as always, I appreciate your patience with this, folks, and I think I found it. Here we go. This is one of my favorite number threes, in fact, and this is, in fact, a 1970s BSR, still made in the USA. You can tell it's from the 1970s, not only because of the made in USA mark, but because during the 1970s, they added these mold ID numbers to their pans. This one says 1H2, for instance. So this is definitely a mid-1970s. And they did indeed grind down the surface, in that, in fact, it has some wonderful mill marks here on the inside to give a nice smooth cooking surface. Yet the outside of this pan is definitely much more rough and unpolished. So and that, of course, is because they were mass produced using automated production rather than being made entirely by hand like they were in the Red Mountain days. And let's see what else we have here now. Yes, I understand that. Thank you for commenting. I love my oval, but I'm looking for the real thing. I think, I would put powdered sugar on it. Well, that's certainly possible. I can think of that. Hello, Peg Tooth. Glad you made it. So, staring at the pie is making me hungry. Well, we do still have the whole weekend yet to make one for the 4th of July. So there's plenty of time for it. And it's really not that hard. I know you mentioned you love all cast iron, but what is your favorite? I can't answer that because it really depends on what it's being used for. I mean, the one thing I've said is that I want all my cast iron to be users rather than collectors. I have made one or two exceptions to that. And yet, even so, I'm still using them. Like this here, for instance, is, again, back here. Let's get this so that you can still see the pie. This is the Made in America 2018 skillet, and yet I'm still cooking in it. Likewise, so it's hard to say. I mean, as I said, it depends on what you're making. I mean, heck, the other day I made 2 ribeye steaks, and I went specifically for my modern day Finex cast iron skillet because that is very thick and smooth and heavy. And heavy cast iron, I think, will sear a steak better than anything else in the world. So if I want to sear a steak, I go for a modern heavy cast iron. If you don't own a Finex or skillet, well, of course, that means you probably own a Lodge for that very same reason. It's thick and heavy, and it will do a fantastic job searing a steak. So for that, there you go. On the other hand, if I wanted to do other kinds of skillet cooking, I would probably reach for my vintage BSR Red Mountain number 8. And on the other hand, if I wanted to do a stir fry, I'd go for my modern Lodge cast iron wok, which works wonderful on this cheap electric stove. And if I wanted to make some Boston baked beans as well, I would break out the Griswold Dutch oven and do that and slow cook them for several hours. And then, of course, there's deep frying, and that's when I can get into my BSR deep fryer, the oval roaster, or the Lodge. Actually, that was a Lodge Sportsman roaster, or you get the idea. I mean, I can't say I have one favorite cast iron because it really depends on what I'm using it for. I mean, for instance, I made that jambalaya in that huge, yeah, I goofed again.
Oh, well, you goofed. That looks beautiful.
I forgot to put an egg wash on the top. So
you need to with the sugar crusting on it?
Yeah, that's it because I cheated. I coated it with butter. I rubbed butter across the top right after it came out of the oven, and then sprinkled it with some sugar.
Everybody, we tell them there's no goof on that. Take a picture of that. Show that up. Show the post. Look at that. Look how gorgeous that is.
They saw me goof. I also made a little goof and put a little divot in there.
Oh my goodness. Everybody, tell him.
No.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Did you use the sugar, the stuff from the yeah.
Yes, I did.
From the cake. So it looks pretty.
Yeah.
So,
the other thing about apple pies, though, is that
yep. Sugar glitter.
Yeah. The other thing.
You can see. If you end up not doing it, what is it? It's glitter sugar that we use for a cake. It's a sparkling sugar. So if you goof, sparkling sugar, it makes it. You look at that. Look how pretty that is.
So sparkling sugar would probably be the duct tape of bakers.
There you go. There you go. It was actually. If you tell them the story about the 15-minute cake.
Yeah. Happy Canada Day, Pegtooth. And yeah, as Sop Mod I'll be back, folks. I have to run my garden and snip basil for tonight's dinner. Pesto and pasta with pork chops. Oh, that sounds very great.
Rub it in.
And the chops will be fried in a Lodge, of course. And there you go. That's what I mean. As I said, for searing, for pork chops or steaks, thick, heavy cast iron, I think is the best. And I would, in fact, go for a modern day Lodge or my Finex over a vintage, thin, smooth Griswold when it comes to making steaks. I mean, the Griswold has a lot of great uses for other things. I mean, it makes a wonderful breakfast pan. As you know, it's so smooth. It certainly helps with making eggs. And likewise, so does, but then again, so does my modern day Lodge Blacklock. So anyway, what was I saying before? Oh, yeah, that's right. I made the jambalaya in that huge 15-gallon cauldron, and I'm very, very proud to own it. It may very well be my most prized possession, and yet I can't say that it's my all-time favorite cast iron pan. So there really is no one answer to that, unfortunately.
I do. Mine's Blacklock.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Jamie really has her eye on the Blacklock, so I'll have to see about that come Christmas, I guess.
No, I'm not talking about big.
Yeah, shit.
I thought you were talking about favorite pans.
Would you pay $40 for a 3-notch unnamed Lodge with an 8 on the bottom? It's in great shape. I thought it was too much for an antique dealer. You know, I probably would not for that reason. The Lodge 3-notch actually is so common enough that as long as you have patience and you just keep on turn off the oven, and you just take your time. It may take months of searching, maybe even years, but hopefully not. You're almost certain to find a 3-notch lodge at a better price than $40. It'll probably be more rusty and coated with crud, which is fine. You can still clean it up. At a flea market that is like about 2 blocks from me, for instance. I know just last week I saw one of the vendors selling an older lodge for $5. It was, again, it had a little rust and it had some crud on it, but $5 for a number 8 lodge, and not even a modern day one either. It was before the helper hander. So there you go. So now I would not pay $40 really for almost any cast iron skillet. But I know partly because my collection, let's change this view if you don't mind, because I think we're getting close to it here. Let's. Hi there. Anyway, no, not only because, look, now it's getting too high. Let me bring this down a little bit. That's a little better. Not only because it's, I have a decent collection already, but because, as I said, if you have patience and you enjoy the hunt, yard sales, estate sales, flea markets, going on road trips, you will find bargains usually when you least expect them. For $40 in an antique store, I would probably get something that I really feel I would be kicking myself if I passed it up. There have been some times when I did that, and let me see. Looking over my collection, besides the gate marked pan, which I only got for $15, there was the time at Brimfield when I came across a cast iron bunt pan. And this was before Lodge re-released the bunt pans, and the bunt pans were selling on eBay for hundreds of dollars, and they were selling it there at Brimfield for $80. So yeah, I actually had to splurge for it. Some of my other good pans came from Brimfield as well, such as, for instance, let me get my thing again. Such as the saucepan that I use to cook these Boston baked beans. This, incidentally, is a BSR. It's a Century Series saucepan. It's really a matter of taste, I think. And I think that's really what I can say to myself when I find a pan that looks really nice. And I'm telling myself, am I really going to use it? I'm having enough trouble using all of my skillets already. And then it's like maybe 5 minutes later, after I've walked away, am I going to regret getting that? Usually I say no. Even when I see things like a Wagner or a Griswold. I have several Griswolds. So, I mean, I honestly, I myself, I am not trying to get a collection of Griswolds. If you are trying to get a collection of Griswolds, and obviously you've got yourself a bucket list, it's like you've got to get that really rare large logo number 4, for instance, for Griswold, or things like that, or their 666 breakfast skillet. So if you're a collector, yes, it's easier to say. Really, you've got a much better idea of what you're looking for. I can't say I'm a collector, and yet I'm still have my eye out for a few things. If I come across in the wild, for instance, a number 14 BSR Red Mountain skillet, I'm going to be sorely pressed to walk away and not get it. I have Stumpy already. I have my number 14 Century Series, and yet I'm thinking if I were to come across a Red Mountain, it would be really tough. I may end up with both, even though Stumpy has done a wonderful job. The other thing I'm actually do have a need for is I want to find myself a Red Mountain number 12 Dutch oven, which is rare. I admit that. I don't know if I'll ever find one. I've got a Century number 12 with a Red Mountain lid, and yeah, I'd like to find a number 12 pot to match it. So I do have a very small bucket list. Let me one last time, and I think we'll be getting on to it. Some folks may recognize this. This is actually British made, not made in the USA, I admit, but it was made in the late 1800s by a company called New Idea. And it had a really wonderful look on it that was decades ahead of its time. When I first saw these things, I thought they were Art Deco from the 1920s, in fact, but they're actually late 1900s. Now, I found this lid at an antique store just outside of Binghamton, New York, and I paid $35 for the lid because I knew what it was, and I don't think the vendor did. Now, obviously, this means I'm keeping an eye out so that one of these days, maybe I'll find the skillet that matches this, or maybe even the Dutch oven. But until then, well, there's always the hunt. Okay, having said all that, down. Okay, I have three, Gina, I have 3 cast iron pots, 4 pans, and half of them were compulsive purchases. I know that feeling. I hardly get to use 4 out of 7 on a regular basis. They cover my cooking needs perfectly. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the danger, of course, of cast ironitis. I mean, you really got to find excuses to use those extra pans. And as I said, that's why I do these videos. Gives me a chance to rotate all of these pans. And anyway, Fluffy, keep on keeping on. Brimfield, can't wait someday to get up there. Yeah, that's right. Brimfield is, let me check the calendar. I believe Brimfield is next week after the 4th of July. So yeah, I'm psyched. Or maybe it's the week after. Either way, I definitely intend to go back there. I might be still wearing a mask, but I'm definitely going back to Brimfield, and I'm looking forward to it. Okay, but anyway, as I mentioned, we have been covering, really, despite all this wandering about, this has really had to do with cast iron made in the USA, which kind of was the whole point, because after all, again, we've got the good old American 4th of July holiday coming up, and yeah, once again, Peg, happy Canada Day. But all of this talk, of course, has been about cast iron made in America, simply because even today, there's simply nothing better. Amazon now is being flooded more and more with these Asian-made cast iron pans from brands like, what are they called, like Gruntle or Gruntnor, I think they are, and other brands like that. And they're cheap too, maybe only a little more expensive than Lodge. But you know what? They look exactly like Lodge cast iron pans. If Lodge cast iron is really that bad, how come all of these companies are trying to imitate them? But that's the thing. I mean, Lodge has managed to survive. They are staying in the USA, and they have managed to actually do well. So to that, again, I can only say congratulations to Lodge cast iron, which I guess is really an example pretty much of how cast iron cookware here in the U.S. has managed. I mean, you know, there was a boom in the early 20th century when cast iron was considered to be disposable. And then, of course, by the later 20th century, USA Cast Iron was going out of business left and right, except for Lodge, and they were almost ready to go out of business as well. And now, suddenly, thanks to the change in our culture over the last decade or so, we've had a new renaissance, and I am glad to have experienced it. Because, yeah, now we are actually getting to see more American-made cast iron, and once again, it's proving itself to be probably the best in the world. And so that, I think, is indeed something to be proud of. Bookworm 73. Also, a lot of the Goodwill cast iron gets put on their auction site, and the prices they get for the pans are off the charts. Yeah, I really stopped looking at the Goodwill auction site years ago. I still browse eBay. Almost never get cast iron on there, though. Once in a great while, maybe every year or two, I think I do find a deal on eBay for cast iron, but it's that rare. It also depends on how bad you want something, Pappy Dan. Yeah, that's exactly it. So, Shadow Walker XM. I have a GSW number 9 Dutch oven lid, and I've been looking forever for the bottom. However, it does make a good lid for my 3-notch Lodge, and there you go. So that's the thing. If the lid fits, wear it. use it with pride. That's definitely what it's there for. As much as it makes a great collector, it's even better to have it as a user. So gas is up to $3.25 a gallon. Driving the garage flea market circuit just got a bit more expensive. Yep. Welcome to the 21st century. Asian cast iron pans lack thickness. They're not as smooth to touch, too. And yet there's still a use for Asian cast iron because, I'm actually surprised. I mean, on one hand, Camp Chef is still doing okay, and I'm glad about that. But I'm really surprised they haven't made more of an effort to publicize their cast iron because, there are a lot of good things to say about Camp Chef, and I'd like the chance to do that, too. Lodge is a great product, in my humble opinion. And yes, indeed. I know, Mr. Cast Iron, I've seen a couple of your videos recently where you've been plugging Lodge Cast Iron, and I don't blame you. I mean, as you said already, if your first cast iron skillet should be a Lodge for many great reasons. So, eBay had an Erie Spider skillet up for $6,000. Yeah, that's, did I mention already that eBay prices are ridiculous? I would consider pretty much any cast iron pan on eBay. A fair price for it would probably be about 1/3 of the eBay price. So in that case, that would mean $2,000 for an Erie Spider skillet, which some collectors may argue might indeed be a fair deal. So, hello, John Vincent. And hello again, Mr. Cast Iron. Yeah, always something new to learn. Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, all I could say is that, again, this was some nice, easy cooking tonight, but I would certainly think that it was worth it because one last time, and yeah, I better give us the money shot as well. And that, of course, is we've got ourselves some Franks and beans here, which is probably about as American and New England a dish as you can get. Oh, yeah. And if you want to cook hot dogs, folks, as I said, once you have had hot dogs cooked in cast iron, you will never be satisfied with boiled hot dogs ever again. No. I'm happy about that. The pie is going to take a couple of hours yet before we can cut it. That's the thing about pie. But I do believe we're getting on to that time. I mean, after all, we are once again approaching an hour and 20 minutes. Whew. So I hope you folks didn't mind my rambling on and on about this. I tried to keep the subject as promised to what we saw, and that was, in fact, American cast iron because, well, again, here we are at another 4th of July. This is the 245th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Only 5 years. Wow, only 5 years till we get to the 250th anniversary. I remember the 200th anniversary in 1976. We didn't do that much. Our family went out on some kind of a long drive to Western Massachusetts. And what I remember most is that we were actually passing through the town of Florida, Massachusetts. I don't know why I remember that, but I do. And I also remember watching the fireworks on TV. Of course, I was only 9 years old back then. So, I mean, as much as I understood it was the 200th anniversary, I don't think I appreciated it anywhere close to what I'm going to appreciate the 250th anniversary or the 245th anniversary taking place 3 days from now. I'm very much looking forward to it, and I hope you folks are too. Well, I know you are. I mean, fair is fair. This is a great country we live in. I mean, I've got to say that much. There's way too much politics. There's way too much trouble. But then again, you could say that for any country in the world. And I still do indeed feel that I'm proud to live in the greatest country of the world, where it allows me to do things like this and speak my mind and enjoy myself and cook in cast iron. And I hope you folks are having yourselves a nice holiday weekend as well. So, and thanks again for all you do, Pappy Dan, and you too, actually. Whatever happened to John Hancock's 12-inch gate mark cast iron skillet? I'll have to look that up and do some research and find out what happened to it. I'm sure it's around there somewhere. Can hear crispy brown bits of a sausage for your chewing. We'll try hot dogs in cast iron. Just about anything can be cooked in cast iron, but no tomato. Well, it depends on how you cook it. I mean, all the people who make fried green tomatoes, for instance, will probably argue otherwise. And having said that, once again, I'd say really it's about time for us to move on, because it is only Thursday night. Tomorrow is Friday, day before a holiday weekend. For some folks, your holiday's probably already started, so you folks have fun. Those of us who still have to work tomorrow, though, it's going to be a fun day tomorrow as we prepare for the holiday weekend. You know, it's like, hi, it's the day before a long weekend, and I want you folks to get out here tonight and fix this problem we've had for the last 6 months. That always happens. So, and having said that, though, at least if nothing else, I've got a good stress relief, and that would be, of course, cooking in cast iron, lodge and otherwise. So thank you once again, everybody, for watching. As always, I hope you've enjoyed this. This was some nice, easy cooking. But next time, it is going to be next Wednesday. It's not going to be next Thursday. I see no reason not to, which means that all I can say once again is see you next Wednesday, folks. Have a good evening.